Hello, everybody, and welcome to Financing Philadelphia's Future, our ongoing public conversation to address issues about public banking and democratizing money for Philadelphia. My name is Peter Winslow. I'll be your host today, filling in for Vanessa Lowe, who has another engagement. As a bit of housekeeping before we begin, we suggest that you, uh, Tim, if you can go to the next slide, that you use speaker view as the most convenient way to participate in this program, and that you put any questions that you have in the chat. Ray and Connie are serving as our chat monitors today, and they will translate your chat questions into questions that we'll ask Jamie as we go through our format. If you have not joined the forum of the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition, please put your information, contact information, essentially your email, in the chat so we can add you to the list. We're very pleased today that our guest is a champion of public banking, our council member Jamie Gauthier, who is the council member for the 3rd District, which encompasses West Philadelphia and some of Southwest Philadelphia. Jamie is the chair of a couple of important committees that are significant for the work that we do and our interests. She's the chair of the Committee on Housing, Neighborhood Development, and the Homeless, and she also chairs the Committee on the Environment. As a champion of public banking, affordable housing, and environmental justice, she voted for the establishment of the Philadelphia Public Financial Authority, and she advocates for a systemic investment strategy to reduce gun violence, acquisition of public land by community land trusts, and other actions that are promoted by the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition. Councilmember Gauthier, we're so pleased to have you with us, and as is our habit here, we'll allow our guests to introduce themselves, so please begin with an introduction.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Councilmember Jamie Gauthier. I'm so proud to represent the city's 3rd District, which is much of West and Southwest Philadelphia. I'm just starting my 2nd term here in council. As was said in the introduction, I focus a lot on affordable housing, as well as just making my district and the city more equitable. So really pleased to be with you today, and I'm going to be discussing my Defying Displacement campaign.
Thank you, Councilmember Gauthier. That's where I'd like to begin, is with the legislative package that you have introduced, targeted to combat the economic and social forces that are creating displacement in some of our communities, especially our Black and Brown and communities that have been historically disadvantaged. And through gentrification, other processes are facing displacement in various ways. So could you describe for us your legislative package and what you have in mind?
Sure thing. So I'll try to be somewhat brief so that we can have enough time for discussion. But I'm proud that earlier this month, Council gave final approval to my Defying Displacement legislative package, and that Mayor Parker has already signed the low-income property tax freeze into law. I'm hopeful that the remainder of the package will become law, though we may have to wait for Council to resume in September, as the mayor has until then to decide whether to sign the bills, let them become law without her signature, or to veto them if she so chooses. When I introduced Defying Displacement back in February, in my remarks on the council floor, I warned that the very thing that makes Philadelphia, Philadelphia is under attack. because many of our neighborhoods are becoming hostile to the Black and brown families who have stewarded them for generations. And I said at that time that we have a choice. The communities that endured redlining, endured deindustrialization, endured disinvestment, would they finally be able to look to their local government as their protector, or will we as local government let the displacement tidal wave wash them away? Defying displacement tackles our city's housing crisis head on, delivering real results and sending a powerful message that the status quo will no longer be permitted to uproot people from our neighborhoods. The first piece of the package is my low-income property tax freeze, which has been signed into law at this point. During the last round of property assessments, over 100,000 homes saw their assessments jump by at least 50%. Almost 31,000 assessments increased by at least 100%. Over 6,000 assessments increased by at least 200%, and 3,500 assessments increased by at least 300%. And I think we all know that these sudden and dramatic increases are too much to bear for the average Philadelphia household. We also know from our budget hearings that another round of reassessments is scheduled for any day now. We weren't able to pass, this type of bill before the last round of assessments because of the state's uniformity clause, but about a year and a half ago, Governor Wolf signed Act 58 into law, introduced by State Rep. Jared Solomon, which permits local tax authorities to provide refunds or forgiveness of real estate taxes for low-income taxpayers. And so my bill was the local legislation that we needed to make a new low-income tax freeze program enabled by the state a reality here in Philadelphia. The program won't zero out people's tax bills, but since we enacted it before the start of the new tax year, eligible low-income homeowners can freeze their tax burden at their existing level. So when their property is reassessed, their tax bills won't go up. I think this is especially timely, fresh off the heels of a study done by the Reinvestment Fund that shows that OPA's practices led to a racial and economic bias in the last round of reassessments, which led to a higher tax burden on low and moderate income homeowners, and most of those homeowners are Black and brown. We know another reassessment is coming. And so, we knew that if we did not do something to try to help people now, we would put multi-generational wealth and family stability at risk. And by making sure that our neediest homeowners can afford their tax bills, we invest in their ability to remain in our neighborhoods where they can attend their local schools, steward our blocks and public spaces, and reinforce their blocks' sense of community. And now that this tax freeze has been authorized, I'll work closely with the administration to set up enrollment in the program ASAP. We also, I'm proud to report, invested $1 million in the budget to promote tax programs like the low-income property tax freeze, and other forms of property tax relief so that we could reach the Philadelphians who need it the most. The second piece of my Defying Displacement campaign makes changes to the Housing Trust Fund. The first thing we did was authorize a ballot measure that proposes a charter change so that the amount of money that the city receives from density bonus payments in lieu of providing affordable housing are added on top of the annual mandatory appropriation into the city's Housing Trust Fund. The code already states that we do this, but the shameful reality is that in practice, we never have. Sometimes we see a spike of by right, multifamily or commercial development in one of our neighborhoods, but the size of the buildings is greater than what neighbors thought was allowed by zoning. It turns out that developers are choosing to gain additional density on their projects through zoning bonuses that are already offered in our code. One of these bonuses allows for denser by right development if you make a payment to the city, which the zoning code has always said was supposed to be used for the purposes of the Housing Trust Fund. However, not once since this payment in lieu option began have these density bonus led to a proportionate increase in the Housing Trust Fund. That money was just going to the general fund and a lot of times just sitting there or being used for other purposes. This contributes to affordable housing citywide being underfunded to the tune of about $36 million in the last 4 years. And it also leads to distrust in the zoning process from community members because they're getting overscale development in their neighborhood, but they're not getting the affordable housing benefits that have been promised to them by the city and by the developer. And so let's talk about the impact my proposed charter change would have on our worsening housing crisis. Density bonus payments generated about $36 million between 2019 and 2022, and budget hearing documents said they generated an additional $7.3 million in 2023. And so that isn't a lot in the grand scheme of all the affordable housing dollars that we receive from the federal government, but it's certainly enough to fund multiple additional affordable housing projects every year, or maybe, start a new RFP when the city identifies the need for a new affordable housing program or project. And in a time when it will literally take us over 200 years to fill our affordable housing gap, if we keep moving at our current pace, we need all the affordable housing resources that we can get. And so this charter change would ensure that we as a city are making good on a commitment that the code already says we're supposed to be making. The ballot measure will appear on the May 2025 ballot, and I'm confident that voters will decide to stop underfunding affordable housing in this city. I also passed a companion bill that mandates that density bonus payments in the Housing Trust Fund must be spent in the council district in which the revenue was generated. I reject the notion, I always have, that affordable housing is somewhere that is built, over here, right? Over here, off somewhere in far-reaching neighborhoods of the city of Philadelphia. The areas experiencing overscale development deserve the affordable housing that they are promised by the city and by developers. And these are communities that tend to be amenity rich. And so by building affordable housing in neighborhoods of opportunity, we're ensuring that working class people and working families have access to the jobs, healthcare, schools, and other resources that they need to thrive. The final component of my Defying Displacement campaign was around strengthening existing protections for residents who are using housing vouchers. I'll just give you a little story. When my childhood best friend became a teenage mom and needed somewhere to live on a tight budget, she applied for and received a housing voucher. And being housing secure allowed her to focus on her future. She earned multiple master's degrees and has been a longtime public school teacher. And this story that I tell is not an anomaly. It's just one example of the tens of thousands of Black and Brown Philadelphians, many of whom are single Black mothers, who lifted themselves out of poverty because they had affordable housing when they needed it the most. But today, however, illegal but tolerated discrimination undermines housing vouchers, and a quarter to 1/3 of voucher holders cannot put their vouchers to use. And this means that working families have no choice but to surrender their voucher along with hundreds of dollars in rental assistance each month that they are actually entitled to by law. Philadelphia landlords overwhelmingly ignore the law and they openly discriminate against voucher holders, preventing our neighbors from accessing the safe, stable, and affordable homes that are crucial for a successful life, healthy communities, and a vibrant Philadelphia. And so my legislation addresses this injustice by amending our Fair Practices Ordinance as it relates to source of income discrimination. And it also brings our Fair Practices Ordinance in line with others nationwide by providing important clarity and updates. The bill does not actually change the anti-discrimination law. Rather, it makes what is already illegal clearer, which is that property owners and managers cannot discriminate against residents using housing vouchers, whether we're talking about explicitly advertised discrimination or landlords intentionally slow rolling repairs and paperwork to prevent a voucher holder from renting a unit. The bill also does change when the private right of action kicks in if an aggrieved household is working with legal assistance. So in the past, people who thought they were the target of this type of discrimination would have to wait a year to take any private legal action. The bill changes that. They can take immediate private legal action if they feel like they are the target of this type of discrimination. A local study found that 67% of landlords citywide refuse to accept housing vouchers. In low poverty neighborhoods, this jumps to 83%. And so I knew that we could not just sit on our hands while literally thousands of families who are entitled to this precious financial resource are illegally prevented from accessing safe, stable, and affordable homes. These vouchers represent some of the largest and most direct means that we have to combat our city's affordable housing crisis. And we know that cities with strong source of income discrimination laws see higher voucher utilization rates. And in a climate where we are losing hundreds of low-cost apartments every year and gaining hundreds more high-priced ones in their stead, vouchers are still one of the best tools to level the playing field for working families. And while I know that any government program can come with challenges, vouchers provide property owners with consistent and sometimes higher than market rate payments, making them a win-win-win for government, for property owners, and for families alike. And so altogether, defying displacement tackles our city's housing crisis from a variety of different angles. It's not a silver bullet, but I'm confident that this package will make a noticeable difference. And I look forward to answering any questions that you all may have. And thank you once again for the opportunity to present today.
Thank you, Councilmember Gauthier. And if I understand correctly, your package was introduced in tranches. There are several bills at the beginning and then several more. At this point, the entire package has been introduced. You're anticipating that the entire package will be passed in the fall, and that,
Well,
except for the charter in the spring, the charter change in the spring.
Almost. We introduced everything at once, but everything had to go to a variety of different council committees. So they were passed out of council committees at different times. But by the end of the session, we had received final passage on every piece of the package. And at this point, the property tax freeze has been signed into law. We also committed $5 million in the FY25 budget for that program over the next year. And then we're waiting to see the mayor's action on the rest of the bills.
Well, congratulations on all that activity. It's a lot to get done in a very short period of time, and that's a real tour de force. So thank you so much for that.
Thank
Much
you.
of what you have described will require financing from different sources that the city has not tapped previously in order to create new affordable housing and to combat some of the worst forces of discrimination, gentrification, and displacement. So we're interested in that. It's sort of the central purpose of democratizing money and what we're hoping to accomplish. And we have a proposal that we've made to the city pension fund to invest in economically targeted investments, local ones, which they do not do at the present time. And we think that out of their $8 or $9 billion that they have, that a small percentage could be allocated to these purposes. And we know that you're supporting that effort and hearings in City Council. Could you speak to the ways in which the pension fund with local economically targeted investments could help to bend the curve of dealing with the housing problems that we have in Philadelphia, so it won't take 200 years.
Sure thing. Yeah. Some of what I put forward has, an increased cost. The housing trust fund piece, the density bonus piece is budget neutral. That money was always supposed to be going to the housing trust fund. We just weren't doing it. So my bill like closed a loophole. But certainly I could see us continuing to fund the low income property tax freeze program, which keeps our most vulnerable homeowners in their homes through, a sort of allocation of the pension or how the pension funds are being directed. Certainly, with the Section 8 voucher protection bill, I would love to put more money into right to counsel so that people not only have a right to take private legal action, but actually have the legal, have the resources to do so through organizations like Community Legal Services and others. But we also have an overwhelming need for things like rental assistance, right? We were able to fight with our allies on council to get $19 million over the mayor's initial proposal for rental assistance, which we know is gravely needed in the city. The mayor's initial proposal was 15 million, and we were able to fight to get 19 more for a total of 34 million. That's a huge win, but the monthly total for the rent gap is $75 million a month, right? So just think about how much more money is needed. We were able to get more money into the budget for Built to Last, which is a wonderful program that helps homeowners with critical repairs as well as energy efficiency improvements to increase energy efficiency. We were able to get 5 million more into the budget for that, but there's such a great need. So certainly there are many ways that we could be, using those pension funds to support ending the housing crisis in our city, and I would support that.
Thank you. We do too. And we think that there's a potential role for the Philadelphia Public Financial Authority in doing that and creating packages of economically targeted investments, such as for affordable housing, specifically for the portfolio of the pension plan. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I like the idea of the public bank, and I think we should move forward with it.
Terrific. So we have more voices. Let me turn to our chat moderators and ask Ray first if there's any questions that you want to pull from the chat.
One question someone had was about the ballot measure. Where can people get information on that and build support for that ballot measure?
Yeah, so all council members were asked to not do ballot measures for November. I think we didn't want to put too much on the November ballot, or because this is a very important election, and we need people to focus on the task at hand. However, it will be on the May 2025 ballot, and typically we'll push out information prior to the election about the ballot initiative and what's happening. So people should just stay tuned for information around that when the time comes nearer. But I'm also happy to share, we have a package of like a 3-pager about the legislation in total that we could share with the folks here.
Great.
Thank you. Connie, is there a question from the chat that you'd like to pose?
Well, one question in the chat was, how can people support your effort? What would be the most useful thing for us citizens to do, other than inform ourselves, but can we build support in any other way?
I mean, I would say with the housing trust fund piece, that's the part where I'm unclear about, whether the admin will support. So if there is, I have I think that got unanimous support. So even if the mayor did veto it, I think we would be able to override the veto. But I've not heard a definitive statement that the administration is going to sign the bill. So, if the
Yeah.
group wanted to make expressions of support, that would be great.
And there's another idea that was floated in a woman named Gail who had to leave, but she said she referred to the New York Times article, which was, I believe, on the weekend, about how New York is converting libraries and where in neighborhoods where they really wanted libraries, and on top of the library building, they're building high-rise affordable housing. And she said, and it's one way of getting a neighborhood that might otherwise not really want, not in my backyard, but we do want a library. So, okay, you
Yes.
can build the housing too. I don't know if you read that article or saw it, but it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, definitely an interesting idea. I don't know that I've heard anything like that in Philadelphia. I have heard though proposals for like other types of spaces, like the Y, for example, and being able to more fully utilize those spaces by putting affordable housing on top. So certainly an interesting idea.
Yeah, I've been on the board of the local Germantown Y, which is now Germantown Life Enrichment Center. That is exactly that. We have
Yeah.
128, rooms, low-income housing in the building, which was like what Old Wise did.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. Ray, do you have another question?
Yeah, there was one about how do you see the potential for co-ops to fight displacement, and what can city council do to support the co-op sector?
Sure. Existing co-ops.
Yeah,
Or new ones, or co-ops in conjunction with community land trusts.
Okay, so a couple things. So one, I did legislation a couple of years ago, the Public Land for Public Benefit bill that gives community land trusts and other forms of organization where there's community ownership a leg up in the city's land disposition process. There was a lot of lobbying against that bill. So at the end of the day, it only was enacted in my district and in the 4th district, but it's something that I want to keep working on as a citywide initiative to make it easier for CLTs. Secondly, I passed a bill called Right of First Refusal a couple of years ago following what happened with the University City townhomes. So a lot of folks are familiar with the townhomes because it was a very high profile example of an expiring property or property backed by a time limited subsidy. But there are literally thousands of these types of housing units across the city. And so the first right of refusal bill that we passed says that if an owner wants to opt out of an affordable housing subsidy, the city, affordable housing providers, or tenant organizations actually have the first right to buy that property and keep it in service, hopefully as affordable housing. And so that bill is now on the city's books, and what we're trying to do is make more resources available for those folks that want to preserve affordable housing to acquire those properties.
Councilman Gauthier, as always, this half hour intentionally goes by really, really fast.
Yes.
You have helped us fill it with lots and lots of information. We always have our guests have the last word. So is there a closing message or remarks that you'd like to leave us with?
Just thank you. Thank you for all of your advocacy. Thank you for fighting to make sure that we democratize the city's finances and that we support, everybody, right? Everybody, particularly the most vulnerable people in our city. And I look forward to continuing to be your partner in that work.
Thank you so much. We're so happy that you are our champion and that you are a supporter of the public banking movement and the Financial Authority for Philadelphia. And we are with you, and we look forward to working together as the days go on.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.